Continuing the series of the top 10 tools that no man can live without, tool belt tools, we're going to cover tape measures. And I can just about guarantee you that 99.99% of you are going to learn something today about this amazing tool that you didn't know. The lowly tape measure. Man, what an incredible tool that we take for granted. What a convenient tool. Have something that can measure 25, 30, even up to 33 feet in a compact package like this that can be used by one person. Man, the old shipbuilders back in the day, they would have liked to have gotten their hands on something like this, right? So, what did they use in the old day? You know, I always like to cover a little bit of history, and you know what? Modern homesteading. I've given a thought about it. That's kind of been our tagline, our logo on the homestead. And what that means to me is not turning our back on things of the old days. You know, sometimes those tools are better or more appropriate, but we should maintain those traditions and we should have a basic understanding of them. But we're not going to be dogmatic and be elitist and think that, well, just because the pioneers didn't use a Stanley 25-foot Fat Max tape means that we can't. We got to go the old school. No, I'm not saying that at all. I think that that's wrong-headed and the wrong way of thinking. But what I do like to consider when I'm laying out all my tools and putting tools together is, let's have both options, right? Let's look back and see, what did the guys do back in the day? And is it something that we can acquire, you know, and have a basic understanding of? Because in a worst case scenario or situation where times got hard, who knows what, all things we can't foresee, these tape measures, I would not consider them to be reliable. Is this what I'm going to use day to day on my work and all that? Absolutely. It's an incredible tool that is a huge time saver. But, you know, I was thinking about this morning. It's kind of like high performance tires. Yeah, you can buy really soft, sticky racing slicks and they perform way better than your all-terrain tires that most of us roll around on, but they're very expensive and they don't last very long. You know, same thing kind of applies to these new tape measures. So having the ability to have, you know, like these old school, the old rulers is nice to have, and there's some companies like this is the Rhino ruler, Swiss-made, beautiful tool. Yes, not super efficient, not going to be the most easiest thing to use. How long is it going to last though? Is it not going to last pretty much forever? So having this in your arsenal, having this in your toolbox, something like that is great. Along with, how about a yardstick? How about a couple of bench rulers, a 12 and a 24? This combination right here, could you not build a house? Could you not pretty much do anything that you needed to do with these? With that being said, we're going to set those aside on the bench because we're not typically going to use these. This is what we're going to be focusing on today. What do we look for, and how do we determine, of all the choices, which one's going to be best for us? Man, this is going to be a fun video. I don't know how I can cover it all this stuff. So many interesting things about the tape measure. We could go on for hours about this. Let's boil it down. So, buyer's guide. You're going to go to Home Depot. You're going to go to your lumber yard. There's going to be a lot of choices, a lot of different lengths, a lot of different companies making them. Here's what I'd recommend. There's only two sizes you really want to look at: a 25 or a 16. Now, I'm talking about for most guys. What I found with the 30s and the 33s, oftentimes they don't seem to be as reliable. I don't know if it's what they try to stuff too much tape in a smaller case, and I have noticed that the cases are getting bigger, but they just don't seem to hold up as long. I think that they're pushing the limits on those, so I'm going to discount the 30s. 25s and 16s are really nice. Again, lots of different brands. Why do I only have the Stanleys here? I like the Stanleys the best. They are comfortable to me. They've always been really reliable, good price point, but the thing I like the most about them is just the ease of reading. I mean, it is a beautiful design that is so simple in low light, bad light, you know, and that's something to consider. You know, my eyes are not as good as they used to be. When I get into these other tapes where they start to get kind of very small and complex, I really like the Stanley. Everything about it, I think, is just about the perfect dimension, color, and all of that. So a 16 or a 25. Now, they're going to come in all different quality grades, too. Your top of the line is going to be your Stanley, your Fat Max brand. I really like these for a lot of reasons. The thing I don't like about them is they're a bit wide. I would prefer them not to be so wide. They don't fit in the hand as well as the traditional Stanley. But all of the features that they have really overcome. Some of the features that are so wonderful on this tape that you don't see on a lot of the other ones is the rubber base. When you're pulling out and you're measuring, you can sit this without locking it down and it won't slide. Some of the other tapes will slide, and that rubber will just hold it right in place, as well as the way that the clip is designed. The clip design on this is so fantastic. You'll see there's a lot to this clip. Maybe you hadn't really considered this before, but there's several things here. Do you see that groove right there? Let me show you what that groove is, that little groove is for. So the groove cut in the tip of the tape measure is designed to fit a screw or a nail. You gonna focus right there? So why do you need that? Yeah, so let's say you're working by yourself. You can set a nail and you can have that hold at a very accurate dimension. And not only that, but you can rotate around there and you're not going to slip off the end of the tape. Really handy if you need to draw radiuses. In addition to the ability to rotate on that screw, there's lots of other things going on with this tip. It's actually, there's a lot you want to consider. So you'll also notice, if you look at these, if you measure them, the first inch, it's not a full inch. It's actually just a little bit shy. It's a little bit shorter than the 2-inch. And the reason being is that this clip will slide back and forth. Well, why is that necessary? Well, it's necessary if you hook over something. If you hook over something and measure versus if you push against it, what you would have is you would have a variation in your measurement. It would always be a 1/16 of an inch off because that's the thickness of this clip. So having the ability for that to slide back and forth compensates for that. So as you pull, it extends it, compensating for that 1/16 of an inch. As you measure up and push, it takes it away. So that's the reason. The one other feature that the FatMax has that I like that I've never seen on any other tape measures is this hook extends to the top. Let's look at this one. The regular traditional hook right there is really good for hooking onto things. But what happens when you're working, this is especially nice when you're working overhead or on crown molding and such, to be able to hook on the top. Because if you hook, you can't read if it's hooked on the bottom. There's nothing there. You can't do it by yourself. But with this, I can take and I can hook on the top of the tape as well, and then pull my dimension off and use that. So that I found to be, I never noticed it really when I bought it, but once you start using one professionally, it really is a super handy thing to have. Keep an eye on that though. You can run into issues. You can see right here, Mrs. W and I were having some measuring differences. I just noticed that we were just a little bit off on several cuts. This is the tape that she was using, and I gave it to her, and I didn't take the time to check and see, look, it's bent. So that's not going to measure the same. She was using this, getting a different dimension that I was getting, and that was the problem. So make sure you take care of that, and that if it's bent, just take your pliers and straighten it out, and all will be well in the world. So once you've determined 16 or 25 footer, you're going to take the break test. And you can do this in the store. You're going to find out what your tape is made of. It is a very simple test to do. My dad, this reminds me of my childhood. My dad was a carpenter contractor, and he always, tape measure was part of his EDC, always had tape measures around because we were always building and stuff. So we used to sit in the living room and to see, this is called the break test, how long we could get a tape measure to extend before it broke over like that. So that will tell you a lot about your tape, the quality of it, and that can make a big difference, especially if you work by yourself a lot. So if we run this one out, this is the classic Stanley, right? Classic, this is a 30-footer. This is tape that I grew up with and used more than any other tape. If we run this out here, we're going to find out what the break test is. I'll put my thumb on, okay, about 7 foot 2 inches for the Stanley. Now we'll go with another version of the Stanley. One on the lower end of the price point right here, we're going to come, what? Ooh, we're beyond 7. Oh, 7 foot 6. 7 foot 6 on that. So here's another brand, the US tape. This is a USA made tape. I like this tape apart from, I don't like the way it's laid out in the writings on it. Let's see how it does. So what's the record? 7 foot 6. Oh, we're at 6 foot 10. Oh, 7 foot 5. Okay. Now, the one that I like, I sure hope it performs for me, the FatMax. How much can we get out of it? I might have to back up here. Great tapes, these. Great tapes. All right, I'm already at 6 foot, 8 foot, 9 foot, still holding, 10 foot. Impressive, huh? I'm going to have to back up here. We got 11 foot. Oh, okay. It breaks off at 11 feet. But right there, that'll tell you at the store, you know, even most of them you'll be able to pull them out and look at them. You can tell which one you want. But the Stanley FatMax is a really great durable tape. just for that reason. It does well on the break test. So here's another feature of the tapes you may not be aware of. Not all of them are going to have this, but many of them, most of them. If you look on the back there, it's going to give you a dimension. And this one here, I believe, says, what does that say? 4 inches. 3 inches. Plus 3 inches. Plus 3 inches. Okay, so what that means is some folks, you know, and I understand this. I mean, this is not something that's used by anyone that I never use it. I don't particularly like it. But the problem you run into is measuring corners. So you run that tape in there, and right, we break over that corner, and it's kind of a guess. The more you do it, the better you get at it, but it's never perfectly close. So if you're doing really critical stuff, it's not a great way to do it. So what the idea is that we know that the body is 3 inches. So we bring the body of the tape here against whatever it is that we're measuring. We look over right here. We see, okay, we're at 9 3/8. We add the 3. Add the 3. Bring this up tight to whatever we're measuring. Add the 3 inches. Then we get our measurement. It's just something you want to consider. You may or may not use that. I'm going to share with you some trade secrets. We all like trade secrets, right? Do we not benefit from the knowledge, the secrets of a guy who's worked with these tools his entire life and shares them with us? The trade secrets are the best part. So here's an example. So let's say you're up on a ladder and you're having difficulty measuring, and you need to measure way over here, right? And you run your tape over, and we run it across like this, and we need to get a little bit further, right? We just need that extra 2 feet. You know, we're struggling. We don't want to have to get down off the ladder and change position and all of that. What you can do is use your knee on your tape. Here, pull it out, get another couple extra feet here. Now, roll that out there like that. I'd even went so far, if I was desperate, to use my foot and get a nice big bit there, and there we can continue to go. Here's another great trick. You can use your tape measure to very simply figure the middle of a measurement. So for example, let's say, we'll pick an easy one though. Let's say we want to know what the half of 40 is. So with our tape measure, we'll take it and we'll bend it, and we'll bring it back to the 40, right? Just like that. Bring it back to the 40. Now when we do that, when we look at the dimension in the middle right there, we're going to see, oh, can you see it? There's the 20. There's the 20. All right, it sounds very, I mean, it's like, oh yeah, no kidding, everyone knows that. But let's take a dimension that's more difficult. And this has never been easy for me because I seem to be somewhat mathematically challenged. But if we have a dimension that's like 36 and 11/16, you know, rattle off your head, what's the center of that? You know, what is the middle of that? So by taking our tape, 37 and whatever, 11/16, I can take that right there. I can quickly look at it and see that the center is what? Well, 18 7/8. It's probably wrong, but it's close enough. The point is you can double check it and you can verify that that's right. The next thing I'm going to show you is even more amazing. I wish I would have learned this years ago. All right, hold on. It's going to blow your mind. Blew my mind. Let's say we have a random piece of sheet good, whatever it is, drywall, plywood, whatever, and we want to cut 4 individual pieces out of this. All right, so we measure this, and usually it's going to be uneven, it's going to have a fraction, and we're left scratching our head, or at least I am. Good grief, how do I figure that equally? Here is such a simple solution. So we want 4 pieces, right? We'll take a number, we'll choose a number, any number that's divisible by 4, right? So we're going to say, okay, 4, 8, 16. All right, 4 will go into 16 4 times, right? So we come up here and we run our tape at an angle like this, and we put it right on the 16 mark, right at the edge of the board, correct? All right, you with me? All right, make sure that's tight. So at 4 and 8 and 12 and 16 are our equal parts. So we see right here, right there, what are we? 3 and 3/16. We're at 6 3/8. See how simple that is? I mean, the elegance and beauty of that just is mind-blowing. So while we're on the topic of marking, how you should mark when you're laying out any dimension, you'll see that carpenters, they use a V. So we want to measure 5 inches, right? We measure a V. Why do you always see them measure a V like that? Well, let's say that you didn't use a V and you simply just made a mark at 5, right? And you come back later. What part of that mark was 5? Was it this side? Was that our mark? Was it this side? Because there we see that we're 1/8 off. So having a V when you mark all the time, no matter what it is, tells you exactly where the point of the measurement was taken. You know, also a guy wants to get in the habit of keeping your pencils really sharp. There's two two pencils that you're going to want to use for carpentry work. If you're doing rough framing and bigger stuff, working with 2x material, then of course the traditional big fat carpenter's pencil is a great option. This is less likely to break in your tool bag. It's just more durable. But keep a point on it. These things will dull really fast and the edge gets fatter and fatter and fatter, and pretty soon you start finding yourself making mistakes because you're just not precise enough. Doing finer stuff, I would say more finished type of work, crown molding base, go with the number 2 pencil. Of course, nothing would be better than the Dixon Wranglerstar official number 2 pencil. You want one of these? A lot of people have asked about these. The only way to get one of these is to see me in person, and I'll give you one out of my pocket, out of my stash. Come see me in Texas. We'll be there in 4 weeks for the Mother Earth News Fair. So if you live in the area, come out and see us. I'll give you a pencil. But yeah, number 2 for heavy lumber framing, number 2 for finished stuff, the big heavy carpenter pencil for your rough framing. So care and feeding of your tape. Is there anything you need to do to make it last longer? There's a couple things important. Don't put it away wet. If it's got mud, if you're working outside in the wintertime, it's got mud and sawdust and wet, don't store it that way. Simply run it all the way out and take a cloth rag and put it back in dry and clean. That will make a big difference because these will rust and then it'll get into the spring and it'll really shorten the life of the tape. The other thing is don't let anybody step on it. You can see a tape has got a special curvature like this, and it's designed to be able to run out like we did in our example. When you step on that, you hyperextend that, and it really puts a stress, and that's usually where the tape will break. You can replace the tapes and the springs. I've done it before. These aren't that expensive. It's probably, maybe your time might be better spent in just buying a new one, but that's going to be your personal choice. One last pro tip I'll share with you, and I'm so disappointed that I don't have the tape that I did this to, but I'll just give you an example here. That's something that's very handy. So what you can do is if you have an old piece of Formica or plastic, this is just a piece that's been cut out of the top of a spray foam can. What you can do is you can use some super glue or you can use some Velcro or whatever you have. Make sure that it's either white or a yellow, light yellow color, because that's what's easiest to see. And you could stick this on there around that circle in that tape, and you can use this to record your measurements. And again, this doesn't write as well, actually doesn't really write at all. But the Formica works really good because what you can do is you can write. You can be up on a ladder, you write your dimensions of the pieces that you want to cut, you can take them down there and you don't have to remember them. So getting down to brass tacks, what's my recommendation? If you haven't bought one, if you want to invest in a tape measure, what are you going to pay for it? I would say top of the line, my most favorite is this one. It's the Stanley Fat Max of 25. You're going to pay around $30 for this. My second choice, if I couldn't have this one, would be the traditional Stanley Power Lock, not in a 30, but a 25 as well. If you're a builder, if you have tools, if you own a cordless drill and a skill saw, you should probably have this tape. If you're living in the city and you don't do a lot of that home improvement type of thing, but you still need a tape measure for small tasks, then get the 16, either one, in the Power Lock. They'll come both in the Power Lock or the Fat Max. Can't go wrong. Great tapes, easy to read, take care of them, last you a long, long time. With that being said, I've got a trivia question for you. Now, no cheating. I want you to answer honestly. If you know it or don't know it, don't do a search. But if you look on these tapes, you'll see, are we going to focus? A black diamond right there. Black diamonds, there's not just one. They lay out and they fall on 8-foot centers. I want you to tell me in the comments, what is the purpose of that black diamond right there? We'll see who the smarties are. Also, these tools and my favorite tools, my particular choices that I've used and I recommend, will be found in my Amazon store at wranglermart.com. You can go over there, and on the front page, I'll list the tape measures that I recommend and a way for you to purchase them. So I appreciate that. It helps to support the channel, and we're always grateful. Don't forget to click the thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't, because we have a lot of great stuff coming up, and we'll see you in Texas. 4 weeks, don't forget. 4 weeks, Belton, Texas. I'll be speaking. The title of the lecture will be 1 hour, are the old tools still relevant to us today? Meaning old hand tools, planes, saws, all of those type of things. Got a interesting presentation you're not going to want to miss. So we'll see you guys on the next video.